Friend, it's me, Amy Lang with Birds and Bees and Kids. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your hectic day and life to spend a little bit of time learning with me about how to identify signs of sexual abuse in a kiddo. No fun, I know, but I have created this new tool. It's called Casper. You may have seen in my email the joke that my husband made, which is that this is Casper, the not so friendly ghost. So let's just jump right in. I know you want to get to the good stuff. And if you have questions or need to reach out to me, you can do it via email if that's the way you got this video, or if you're watching it on YouTube, my information is in the little note area down below. So let's do this, shall we? So this is stressful stuff. So we'll have slides of nature as we go along, just to give you a little pause as we get going. For those of you who don't know who I am, my company is called Birds and Bees and Kids, and I am a parent educator, and I teach parents how to talk with their kids about sex. And I also work with folks who work with children. I'm a sexual abuse prevention specialist. So we're doing the specialist stuff right now. All right. So Casper, I love acronyms and I like things to be easy. And Casper, most of us, many of us have a nice connotation with as a friendly ghost. So this is really a friendly tool to help you do a better job of assessing whether or not a child has been sexually abused or if they need more help and what kind of help they need. The other classes I teach are more broadly based in more broadly based in sexual behavior in children. But this is a new thing. I hope you like it. I hope it's helpful. All right, let's talk about these letters. So C stands for clues. So kids give clues as to whether or not something is going on with them. And I will give you some examples of these in just a minute. A, avoidance. Sometimes kids' behavior will start to change and they'll start to avoid different people, circumstances, and things like that. So A is for avoidance. S is for sexually inappropriate behaviors. So these are behaviors that are inappropriate because they are usually adult-like and sexualized. P, physical problems. Oftentimes when kids have been sexually abused or experienced sexual abuse, they develop different kinds of physical problems. So we'll look at some of those. Emotional issues. This is pretty obvious. Kids who've been sexually abused can oftentimes have some pretty big emotional issues. Regression. Kids with sexual abuse in their past or current can oftentimes exhibit some regressive behaviors. So that's Casper. Short and sweet. I want to give you some details. I said this was going to be short, so I'm going to keep it short. So let's look a little more deeply at what these different things mean. So let's look at clues. So first of all, some clues might be that the child will say things that are intended to provoke a discussion about sexual issues. So they might say something, something about, like maybe there's a 7-year-old who says something about making out or something kind of weirdly provocative in that 7-year-old like age, or an older kid that talks about some kind of sex act. That kind of thing, asking questions that are not developmentally typical. So maybe you've got a 10-year-old who's really, really interested in, different kinds of ways people have sex, or they are just seem like more sophisticated in their question asking. So a 10-year-old would have questions about periods and that kind of thing. A 10-year-old who might be experiencing some kind of sexual abuse might have more questions about different kinds of underwear, like sexy underwear, that kind of thing. They may have new language. So usually this is adult-like slang. So they may start using words that are like, that is not something a typical 12-year-old uses, that kind of talking that way about sexuality. That can be something, and that's usually also like maybe about private body parts, that kind of thing. A couple other things, compulsive porn viewing. So kids watch porn these days, I know, but really not being able to stop. Like that can oftentimes be an indication of physical sexual abuse, but also pornography watching is just sexually abusive in and of itself because it's terrible for children. So that's just a handful of things. Remember, we're keeping this short and sweet because I know you're busy. Nature, that's sweet. All right. Avoidance. So when a kid is exhibiting avoidance, oftentimes they will develop new fears of a certain place or a person. So maybe they were totally cool to go to the bathroom, like they're a 5-year-old at preschool, and they're like totally fine going to the bathroom with a certain child, for example. Oftentimes kids will sexually abuse other kids, and all of a sudden they don't want to go in the bathroom with that kid. So that would be a new fear of a certain person, and possibly a place, right? They just don't want to go in the bathroom. They won't go in the bathroom. That's a place thing. Or they develop noticeable fears. So maybe their stepfather, I'm just making stuff up, not throwing any shade at stepfathers. Stepfather comes to pick them up and from school, and they are suddenly like really not really afraid of them. Or they're going to go to grandma's house that night and they're like, I do not want to go. I do not want to go. And this is all new. Sometimes with little kids, they're refusing to bathe. They don't want to take their clothes off to change or to bathe. That can be really common. With older kids, just withdrawing from their usual peer group and their friends and really becoming isolated in a way that does not feel adolescent typical, right? Because adolescents do often pull away, but we're talking a big change in terms of who they're hanging out with. And then another piece would be like just being really uncomfortable with any kind of sexual topic. So talking about dating or romance, watching shows, anything like that, where they have a big, like, I don't want to see this, I don't want to hear it, avoidance. Ah, butterflies. All right. Sexually inappropriate behaviors, as you may already know, as you might have met me through this, I teach an entire class on sexual behavior in children and teens, and this is one of the places, this is where we hang our hats. We spend a lot of time here. So I'm just going to give you some examples of things that would be developmentally inappropriate or sexually inappropriate for their age group. So in early childhood and elementary school, we just a handful of things are like they write or draw sexual images. So an example would be that a 4-year-old draws a picture of someone with, sorry, this is graphic, but might draw a picture of someone with an erect penis with liquid coming out of it. And yeah, they might be peeing. Yeah, they might not be. So you need to be careful about that. Asking kids to engage in sexual behaviors with them, trying to get kids to do stuff with them. So like looking at or touching private parts, trying to get a kid in corner a kid to pull down their pants, that kind of thing. So usually when we're looking at this age group, what we're worried about is any kind of behavior that's adult-like. So if you say to yourself, how would an adult or a teenager say this, do that, then that's concerning. And also if it's repeated, it's really concerning. Like you're like, hey, it's not okay or safe to do that. And then they keep trying to do the thing. Let me see what else I have here. And then one thing too, with kids that may have been sexually abused is oftentimes like, yeah, they'll write or draw sexual images, but they might talk about it or seek them out or have nightmares where there's something happened with people. They might not have the language, but if a child is having nightmares and they're having a bad dream about their older brother or their cousin or something like that, that might be a clue. And I should have said this sooner, that this is not diagnostic. This is just some help for you to get less gray when it comes to trying to figure out like what's up with a kid. What's up with a kid? All right, a little bit older, middle schoolers and older. Full on acting out sexually. So you know that that kid is pursuing people for sexual relationship. They're talking about it. They use graphic sexual language. They might have a high level of knowledge, sexual knowledge for their age. So you might have a 13-year-old girl who just really sounds like she knows what she's talking about. If you overhear her having a conversation with a peer, that would be a red flag. And I know I don't need to tell you that. And these days, that red flag, that could be happening because of how much porn they've consumed, but the child safety comes first. So it may be porn consumption. It may be that something else is happening to her. Sometimes in this age group, these kids may actively pursue relationships with adults, and they may also have a secret relationship with an older kid or adult. So those are definitely red flags for these older kiddos. Yay, nature, nature, nature. All right, physical problems. So sometimes this stuff is harder to suss out because you're not going to be seeing a child after a certain age. You're not going to be seeing their bodies, so you might not see anything that's wrong with them. So sometimes this is just things they tell you. So, for example, you might notice a child that has frequent health issues, so they're constantly sick. Stomach aches are really common, really, really common. You might know that they have trouble falling asleep. They might have insomnia. They might have night terrors. Those are things that can happen. Um, they may have image issues, so eating disorder, self-harm, feelings of disgust, like they talk about their bodies as if they're disgusting, that kind of thing. That's usually an older kid thing, but young kids too. I can't remember what I have here. This stuff is awful, but if you know of a child that it has an STI or redness or soreness in their genitals or complaining about their bottom hurting, that kind of thing, absolutely a cause for concern. And then substance abuse, and this is obviously with a little bit older kiddos. Isn't that pretty? I know that half of these are AI generated, but they're really lovely. Maybe this isn't. Let's pretend it's not. Emotional issues. So, of course, they're going to have emotional issues. And sometimes you can't tell. This is why Casper is like this expansive thing, because you're not going to have just one thing happening. But the emotional issues are unavoidable. So, things you might notice is kind of back to the new fears thing. So, excessive worry. They might become depressed, aggressive, more clingy, and more needy. They might become withdrawn. So what you're looking for is a behavior change, right? Like not a like your kid goes from being happy-go-lucky to being really clingy and needy, something is up. If you've got an already kind of grumpy kid and they've been kind of, aggressive and pissy and they suddenly get more aggressive, then something might be up. And then the withdraw, it's hard in adolescence, right? Adolescents withdraw. So just be mindful of like the whole child. More nature. What else? Let me see. Regression. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself with my notes. So regression. So this is when a kid regresses. So they might start bedwetting when that has not happened for years. They might start sucking their thumbs. They might use baby talk or change the way they dress. They also like the tone of their voice might change, their interests might change and become more childlike if they're an older kid. So we're just looking for some signs of like, oh, you're not where you should be anymore. You're doing things like you're an 8-year-old and you're kind of acting like a 5-year-old. Something might be up. Something might be up. All right, I just banged that out, my friends, and that is what I promised you. So, a couple things. So, like I said, this is not diagnostic. This is just to give you a little bit of a tighter ship in terms of assessing kids' behaviors. But one thing you do need to remember is this. Sometimes these behaviors show up during a divorce, if there's been a death in the family, if they're just having problems at school, or with friends, or they've had an anxiety-inducing or some other kind of traumatic event. Sometimes these kinds of behaviors can show up. But if they are sexual behaviors, probably abuse. And if it's not full-on sexual abuse, it might be porn exposure, because that can be abusive. And especially with younger kids, they're just trying to figure out what they saw and they'll repeat stuff and they'll try to do stuff. But bottom line is this. If you suspect abuse, you know the rule, you need to report. Now, if you're a parent watching this, same rule. If you have a child in your life and they're some of these things that I'm talking about, and you're watching this because you're worried about a child, that means you suspect abuse. So, as a non-person who works with kids, teacher, et cetera, just as a human being, you can call Child Protective Services in your area. You can report the behavior, because the child needs help. And 90% of the time, the person that abuses a child is known to the family and known to the child. And so this can be really awful, but at the end of the day, the most important person in the room is that child that you know and love. And if the person that is messing with them, chances are really high, it could be the cousin, the football coach, the pastor, all that stuff. You know who it could be, right? So you need to protect the child. It is your responsibility to step up. And yeah, it might be awful, but at the end of the day, again, it's about this child's health and safety. So don't be afraid to report. And the good news about being a civilian reporting is that they can't tell it was, they can't report back to the family that it was you. People may figure it out, but again, we don't care. And then for those of you who work with children, you know the rule, suspect, report. All right, that's it. So you have a happy handout to help you with this. If this is something you think your staff would appreciate, or if you work with a group that works with children, and you would like a deeper dive training into Casper or my sexual behavior in children class, links to find me are in YouTube. Of course, if you got this via an email, just send me a note back and we can figure it out. All right, so thank you for trusting me with your time. I hope this was helpful. Of course, if you have questions, clarifications, worried about a kid, please reach out to me. Okay, thanks. Have a great day.